What's up, everybody, and welcome to the State of Wild, episode 31, a regular YouTube video web series podcast thingy. My name is Meowth, and as usual, I'm joined by my good friend Corbett. Corbett, how are you doing this week?
Hey, what's up, Meowth? I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna bullshit. I am having a rough week in general, but I'm very happy to be here and talk stuff over with you on this episode.
Yeah, I mean, I feel you, dude. It's been a very long week and a half, I feel like, just on that grind, you know? You know when people ask you, how are you doing? And you're just like, yeah, it's going.
Living the dream.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's been my life for the past week and a half. But all that sadness aside, this is going to be a good episode. I'm looking forward to it. We're going to be talking a lot about the WoW metagame and kind of our big first impressions now that the meta's finally settled. But before we do, just a reminder to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you guys enjoy our content. It does support us a lot. But yeah, Corbett, let's go ahead and start talking about it. It's been a couple weeks since Darkmoon Races. The meta has started to settle. And so Tempo Storm, usually they're really, really on top of things. They took their first stab at kind of describing the Darkmoon Races metagame. And so what we wanted to do to begin this is kind of analyze their meta reports, see whether we agree with it or not. Again, this report is written by 4 or 5 high legend people that play Wild, probably more than Corbett and I do at this point. And so they're very well informed. And let's talk about what we have here. So in Tier 1, for the Tempest Meta Report, Tier 1 is Secret Mage, Dark Lair Warlock, Odd Rogue, Arena Priest, and Kingsbane Rogue. Tier 2, Odd Paladin, Pirate Warrior, Big Priest, Odd Warrior. Diving down into Tier 3 and Tier 4, this is where things get a little bit fuzzy because they're not as popular. But we see Discard Warlock, Reno Lock, Odd Demon Hunter, Big Shaman, Aggro Druid, Melee Druid, and DMH. And then Tier 4, all the nice little memes down here with Quest Mage, Even Shaman, Galakrond Warrior, Key Warlock, Reno Secret Mage, and Hand Buff Paladin. So yeah, Corbett, first of all, initial impressions about the tier list. Do you think it captures the Darkmoon Races metagame pretty fairly?
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I think this is, for the most part, aligning with what I've been seeing and feeling. Mm-hmm. I think once you get down, like you said, into the Tier 3, Tier 4 area, you can start nitpicking a lot more. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's like, does it matter as much? Is it really relevant whether deck's Tier 3 or Tier 4 or not in one of these reports? It's not as much of a big deal. So I'm not going to fight someone if they think Quest Mage is better than Even Shaman or something. But for the top of the meta report, I think this is all pretty dead on. If I was going to switch up one thing, I'd put Reno Lock into that top 9 of Tier 1 and Tier 2 decks. But those actually, if you make that swap, that Reno Lock above Odd Warrior, those would be the same 9 decks that I would have in these tiers here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think both the Tempest Storm report and just kind of general public perception of what has been strong in the metagame, kind of that they align, which is not what we normally see, right? We talked a little bit about this the last time we did a VS report, where it was the first time in a while that we had seen the powerful decks also be the most popular decks, right? At some point, there was this disconnect where stuff like Odd Paladin and Odd Rogue would be some of the strongest decks in the format, but would be the 12th or 13th most played deck, right? Or where Big Priest would be super popular, even though it was a very weak deck. So I think for the past couple of months, public perception of what's strong has kind of aligned with what's actually strong. And so I'm not very surprised that what the meta report that Tempest Storm put out kind of aligns with what we feel.
Yeah, I think in general, the Wild player base has actually been a lot better and a lot smarter, I think, in picking up these decks. I think that sometimes there are still some things that have slipped through the cracks. We're talking about how in the previous VS report, the strongest decks were mostly there, but you still had something like Odd Rogue, which was so unpopular that it didn't even show up in our low sample tier list.
Yeah.
But I think for the most part, the Wild community has sort of been gravitating more and more accurately towards the best stuff.
Good job, Wild community. You guys are getting smarter.
yeah.
So let's kind of use this as a launching point to talk about our impressions of the metagame. And so you kind of talked about Reno Lock over Odd Warrior, and that would be your top 9. And I would argue that right now we have 9 top tier decks in the metagame. And so I think we're pretty happy with that because that means the meta has diversified with Darkmoon Races, right? Prior to Darkmoon Races, it might not have been the most diverse. I know there was a lot of complaining about that. But now I think we have 9 decks that are Tier 1, Tier 2. that can very easily hit Legend and very easily hit relatively high Legend. And so just to reiterate those, we have Secret Mage, Kingsbane, Dark Glare, Odd Rogue, Reno Priest, Big Priest, Reno Lock, Pirate Warrior, and Odd Paladin in no specific order. So those are kind of the 9 best decks in the format. We've got a diversity of, I would say a diversity of archetypes. We have control, combo, and aggro. Yeah, we take those if you consider Dark Glare combo. So Corbett, would you agree that these 9 decks are the best? And if you had to make any changes to the ordering of Tempo Storms, if we had to nitpick, right, would you shift around some of the order of what you think the best decks are?
Yeah, so like I said, I agree with the 9, like that we just moved that Reno Lock up. As for the specific order of this, I think it's pretty well nailed. Like I think Pirate Warriors at the lower end, I think Odd Paladins at the middle to lower end. I think Big Priest is actually very, very good right now. So Big Priest got a massive upgrade with Hysteria. Hysteria is so good in the Dark Lair matchup and just like a ridiculous removal tool in general. I think that's a deck that's actually very, very strong right now. I'm very happy that they had Odd Rogue where it is, because I think that might catch some people off guard, because Odd Rogue, as always, isn't played that much. But Odd Rogue got Nitro Boost just like Kingsbane, and Nitro Boost is still insane in Odd Rogue. So Odd Rogue in tier 1, I totally agree with that. I'm not sure about Mage and Dark Lair. Just like I feel indecisive right now, right? It's only been a week and a bit since the I guess since the Tiller nerf, right? It's like Wild's actually on even more of a delay than Standard, because we had our first week and then that was all deleted. It's like we got a reset, which is even more than Standard, which is still in a bit of flux. So my very early impressions, I think that Mage and Dark Lair, they might have taken a little step back. Mage didn't pick up anything. Dark Lair picked up Backfire, but a lot of other tools came out that actually hurt Dark Lair, whether it's Vendor or Hysteria. Hysteria is so damn good for a deck like Reno Lock, which didn't have super clean ways to deal with like double giants on board on turn 4. It was more like Plague of Flames and Prey, and that's it. Now it actually has like, you can't just tempo out your giants as like a Dark Lair into a Reno Lock, like completely unchecked. And so I'm wanting to see how that feels out. But I think for the most part, this is all correct. I think the meta is very aggressive, Reno-centric. I like aggro Reno, and then Big Priest is just doing, Big Priest things, which we love to see in the world.
I would agree that I think the gap decreased, right, between the top decks and, like, the next batch. Secret Mage, like you said, didn't get anything. Dark Lair, I think, dude, Hysteria is absolutely broken against Dark. Like, it's solos against Dark Lair. Which is why you see a lot of Priest and Warlock, I think, rising in the rankings. And then we saw a lot of decks get buffs, right? We saw Rogues get buffs, we saw Pirate Warrior get buffs, and all that kind of good stuff. So, I mean, let's talk about it. Let's give a definitive ranking, okay, dude? If you had to give me your 9 top decks in order, all right? And I'm only doing this so that people in the comments can pick on us, right?
Oh,
for that engagement. I'll go first. I'll give you a little bit of time. So I think, for me, personally, I think Secret Mage is still by far and away the best deck, the most consistent deck. Especially if you're trying to climb to Legend. It's the best aggro deck in my opinion. Followed by, I actually have Big Priest as my second best deck right now. And that might shock a lot of people. But I think Big Priest is like absolutely broken right now, because Shadow Essence on 5 kind of just solos a lot of the aggressive matchups in the metagame. So it kind of solos Rogue, it solos Pirate Warriors, it solos Odd Paladin, because you also have all the Priest AoE. And it's also really good against Dark Lair Warlock. So for me, Big Priest I think is the second best deck, followed by Kingsbane with Nitro Boost. I have Dark Lair as the 4th best deck. I know I don't play in the top 30 Legends, so I don't play against the best of the best Dark Lair players, so I might be a little bit wrong with this one. But I think the Hysteria print has hurt Dark Lair, as well as the rise of all these other aggressive decks in the metagame. And then Reno Priest for me is the 5th, followed by Odd Rogue, Odd Paladin, Reno Lock, and then I think I have Pirate Warrior as the 9th best deck, and I hesitate to put Pirate Warrior maybe even in the top 9, because it feels so much weaker than Kingsbane and Odd Rogue. It feels like those Rogue decks just do what Pirate Warrior wants to do, just better. But yeah, did I give you enough time to figure out your
I feel like this is just like in like high school, when the teacher announced that there was homework that's still in my bag and I hadn't done it, and I'm trying to scramble to do it before they come around and collect things.
I know it's probably
But all right, I'll give it a shot. Okay, my 9 best ranking these decks. I'm gonna go and say Glare number 1. I'm gonna go Secret Mage 2, Odd Rogue 3.
Okay.
Big Priest 4, Kingsbane 5, Reno Priest 6, and then Reno Lock, Odd Pally, Reno Lock, Pirate Warrior. I don't think I missed any.
No, I think you got 9.
All right, I think I got my 9. All right, so there we go. There's my 9 off the top of the dome. But like I said, not sure yet. You know, it's very early days. It's very early days. I think like Kingsbane in general. I think if Kingsbane didn't have such ridiculous tech options for it, I think Kingsbane would be a lot nuttier. But the fact that people do go out of their way to like aggressively tech against Kingsbane with things like Sticky Finger and Glut Ooze and this like even Zeph in general, like I think Kingsbane is just as much public enemy number 1 as something like Mage or Dark Lair. There's a lot of attention to Kingsbane right now, and so I think maybe if Kingsbane becomes a little bit less popular, it might be able to rise up the rankings a little bit as it gets less attention.
Do you think Kingsbane is currently in that like? Do you think Kingsbane is currently in that situation where like Reno Priest used to be, where everybody was running Finley Wizard, all the tech options to try to beat Reno Priest, and now people are currently on Kingsbane as like the flavor deck of the month that I hate, so I'm going to attack against it before people eventually move to running Eater Secrets and Kazan Mystics and all of their decks to tech on Secret Mage. Do you think it's just in that situation and like you probably shouldn't be running tech options?
Sorry.
You good.
Yeah, I think from the tech that I've seen, most of the meta is very much targeted at Glare and Kingsbane at the ranks that I've been playing it. And so those 2 decks are hurting a little bit just because it's a little bit more attention headed their way. Like all the priests that I've been seeing all run Wave of Apathy, which is a thing that, you know, isn't necessarily seen across ladder. So I think if those decks become a little bit less popular, it's the same thing that you said about Reno Priest, right? Where right now they're very, very strong, but they're getting checked a little bit compared to maybe what they should be. But yeah, Kingsbane's very popular, so I don't know. Kingsbane's good. Nitro Boost is a good card. By the way, Nitro Boost. I just want to mention, we were talking about the data of it and how Nitro Boost was performing. Some of that like early sample stuff kind of evened out, and we can see that Nitro Boost is like a very, very, very good card in Kingsbane. It's still worse than like Deadly Poison, it looks like, but it's still like elite in that deck. So the low sample stuff kind of evened out there.
It kind of makes sense that it's worse than Deadly though, right? Because it's a little bit more situational to activate and use.
Yeah.
So yeah, makes sense. Yeah. But I don't think it's any surprise that it's ending up strong. I would have been absolutely shocked if the data like evened out and showed that it was poor. Like my mind would have been blown. I would also, I think we're talking about these top 9, but I would also argue that like the gap in power level of these 9 decks is so much closer than it was before Darkmoon Races, which I think is a very good thing moving forward into the future weeks of the metagame. But let's kind of take a step down. Let's move to the next tier, right? Tier 3, or the decks that we think are close to breaking into the top tier. So whether it's we see some sort of potential balance changes in the future, or these decks need just like 1 or 2 powerful cards in the next set, whatever that might be, they're really, really close to breaking into that top tier. And so some of the decks that we kind of had here were Discard Warlock, Odd Demon Hunter, Hand Buff Paladin, J Druid, Aggro Druid, maybe Odd Warrior. I know Odd Warrior is a deck that's very, very popular at certain ranks and legends, but we don't necessarily think it's that top tier of a deck. So would you agree with those? Do you think I'm missing anything?
I think that Even Shaman is something that could definitely pop up, depending on what we get in the future. And I think Quest Mage is always looming, right? Like Quest Mage it's close. Like there's always a chance that Quest Mage could just suddenly become very busted quite easily without needing that much. Like Mana Biscuit, Mana Biscuit just allows you to pop up so much. So I think Quest Mage sucks right now, but if it ever gets that little bit faster than it needs to, be, it'll be right back there.
Man, I'm gonna go ahead and say, you know why Mana Biscuit's so broken? Because Sorcerer's Apprentice's card, and you get to gain mana when you play that. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Sorcerer's Apprentice is a very good card because it makes things cost 0. But yeah, I think the metagame is overall in a much healthier spot than it was Darkmoon Races, and I'm pretty happy that the meta has, I think, shifted. there's not new decks, but I think power level has shifted, which I think is a good thing. And I know that might not appease a lot of people, because I know a lot of people want, oh, where's my brand new 2 or 3 decks in the top tier? We're not going to get that in Wild, and I think the power level evening out, I think, is a big thing, because that was one of the big things that I was a little bit frustrated at, I think, before Darkmoon Races, where it felt like there were 2 or 3 decks that were very, very high power level compared to everything else, and now I feel like the power levels have kind of more evened out, and I'm very happy with that. And so I think Darkmoon Races has had a pretty significant positive impact on the WoW format.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think everything's a lot closer now than it was. Basically, because the way I saw it was Mage and Glare were kind of very much like the top 2 dogs, like heading right into the Darkmoon Races mini set. But Dark Glare kind of got like a little bit countered by Hysteria being released and Vendor, which are both like 2 pretty devastating cards towards that deck. And Mage got nothing. Whereas a whole bunch of stuff in like tier 2 and so on, like Big Priest or, you know, like Odd Rogue, Kingsbane Rogue, that all got like significant upgrades. So everything's a lot tighter now, and it is more diverse, even if it is sort of the same decks that we've been seeing for, you know, some time.
Yeah, but that's going to wrap it up for our kind of mini meta report. So let us know whether you guys agree or disagree with us, and let us know what you guys think are the best decks in the format down in the comments below. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our next segment, the Iksar of the week, or the news of the week. Basically, this is where we recap Iksar's weekly AMAs, because there's not really much else going on in the Wild scene right now. So Iksar, if you guys don't know, does weekly Q&As over on Twitter every Wednesday for about an hour, where he answers questions, requests, really annoying comments on on Twitter. Yeah, so this week on his AMA, there was nothing like super splashy, I think, announced, but he did announce a couple small things, specifically related to the classic set rework that's coming with the new expansion, whether that's in March or April, where he talked about new cards are going to be added to the classic set, old cards will be making a return, and some older cards are being rebalanced, which I think is the thing that caught a lot of people's eyes. So Ancient of Lore unnerf, maybe. Cards like that are probably on the eyes. I'm excited for what this means. I just want this like classic set rework to be announced already, just because it's being hyped up it's being hyped up a ton, and I'm just excited to see what it does for the game, and both our format and the standard format.
It's really like those things where it's like that last 2 weeks you play Hearthstone before an expansion comes out. It's like that, except it's lasting 2 months. Where like we just know that Hearthstone's gonna look so different in this little time period, but we're just kind of like just lasting. We're just trying to hold out and suffer through. Like Ancient of Lore costing 7. I don't know. It does, like the way that he phrased some things made me think that they might not be going to the basic set thing that we were talking about.
Yeah.
Like
a rotating kind of classic set.
Yeah, I don't know what they're gonna do. It did. I'm not sure exactly, but I mean, it's kind of all stuff that we knew, right? Like they will be adding new cards. They other cards that they think deserve to be in the classic set and Evergreen will be making a comeback. I'm really interested in what cards they pick for that, by the way. Yeah. Like which previous wild cards and things like that they think would make really good additions to the Evergreen set. So yeah, still waiting on this stuff. Looking forward to it. Just kind of, you know, taking whatever little tidbit of information that we get.
Latch on to.
Yeah, before it all just happens in March or so.
I think it's always fun to ponder what the reverts and the buffs could be, and it's always fun to picture what a meta might be like with a 5-mana Ancient of Lore or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And maybe we'll revisit that for another episode where we don't. Have
maybe we can. We can go through and pick out our favorites for cards to go to the classic set. Maybe that'd be a fun thing we can go through.
Yeah. Look forward to that, guys. We're gonna definitely be
teaser.
So a couple of other comments. There was a really interesting question that was posed. I know players have been wrong a lot when it comes to power level, asking for nerfs, but what has been the most wrong that comes to your mind? Which I think was a very unique question, right? Because we know that players are wrong a lot when it comes to power levels. It's mainly about play perception and play patterns and stuff like that. And so Iksar replies, Psych Melon, so Juicy Psych Melon and Glide were probably the most recent examples of cards that we knew were relatively weak to medium power level pre-released, that people were complaining about a ton. and Jade Druid. So Jade Druid was also a mostly middling deck that saw much more outcry for power level violation than was actually true. He didn't specify whether the Jade Druid talk was relative to standard or wild. I'm assuming standard.
Yeah, what he's referring to here, I'm like certain of it. He's talking about the period between Gadgetzan and Ongoro, or like all of Ongoro, where Jade Druid never really left tier 3. It was like borderline like tier 3, tier 2, like mostly lower tier for that entire time period, but it was hated and highly played. It was one of those decks that saw about like 8% share of the meta almost all the time. But it was just bad. Like, it just wasn't really a good deck. Now that all changed when KFT came out, and it got 5 mana Spreading Plague when it had
Ultimate Infestation. Oh god!
And it had Ultimate Infestation come out, and it had still the the like 2 mana Innovate or like Innovative Refresh too. And so but between Gadazan and Ongoro, Jade Druid was sort of disproportionately yelled about.
Yeah, I still remember the controversy about Glide. Holy shit, dude! Like,
yeah, that was actually crazy. Where Glide came out and people were literally complaining about their pre-order because they said that Glide was going to destroy the game. Meanwhile, I'm kind of in the CompHS Discord, and there's a few of us who are going, "Is this card even good? Like, wait, do we even want this? This seems kind of not very strong." And I think a lot of Reddit outcry and Twitter outcry for Glide.
Yeah, his comment about Juicy Cyclone though was really interesting to me because it's probably like really weak in standard, and I think it was really weak in standard. But they printed that when we already had 7 mana Aviana, 8 mana Tall Waggle, 9 mana Aviana. Wait, 7 mana Azalina, 8 mana Tog, 9 mana Aviana. Got these A names, and 10 mana Kun. Like, we already had that combo deck in Wild, and then they printed Psych Melon. And so I think there was a lot of outcry from the Wild community specifically about Psych Melon. And I still outcry about Psych Melon because I still think it's a dumb card. But I guess it's maybe, it probably is not really warranted if the power level's showing that it's not that strong.
Well, it's just about context, right? So he's talking about the context of standard players, which is what the majority of players are. And like the amount of feedback.
Why doesn't everybody play our format, dude? Come on.
Yeah, I know, it's the nuts. Why did they come here? But no, so like they primarily design obviously standard in mind. The feedback that they get on Reddit is about standard. It was probably a whole bunch of, oh my god, this is dude, what's the 7 Sprint? God, I forgot what it was called. This is Sprint for 4 mana. It tutors me out. And in standard, there wasn't really use for it. In Wild, it was kind of a different thing. But they're always fine with printing stuff that pushes the boundaries in Wild. You just saw it with Tiller, right?
That's true.
Like they were told what happened with Tiller, and they said, we're not going to fix it. We're going to see how it plays out. And Melons is another situation where they ended up nerfing Aviana because of the play pattern. But ultimately in Wild, it's just a different situation. Like standard is always the main emphasis when it comes to these things.
Yeah, I wonder. I would love to have like devs on the podcast, like ask them this specific question, like, okay, so you knew that Psych Melon was going to be printed, and you probably knew that it was going to be weak in standard, but I wonder, like, did they print it specifically like for Wild to push the boundaries of the deck in Wild? Like, what do you think the reasoning behind printing that then was? And I would love to get the perspective of like a dev about that.
Yeah, I think at the time in standard there was a whole bunch of 7-8 cost cards that could synergize together. Like there was Giant Anaconda. There was I think there was the card that was like 8 mana and you would add like a 10 cost copy to your hand, like a 10/10 copy. Maybe I'm getting the sets a little bit confused, but I do think that there was like high cost Druid synergy stuff, and they kind of just wanted a way to like ramp, fill your hand with big stuff and play it out. And maybe that's a fun archetype for the Timmies of the world, right? Like it's fine if that card's weak and strong in Wild, because they're fine making things strong in Wild even if it is degen, they're willing to sort of push that boundary because the barrier of entry is so high. So I think just like pushing archetypes and standards fun.
Yeah,
it would be nice to hear from the dev team about that kind of thing. That would be interesting for sure.
And then speaking of cards that were printed and may eventually get printed, I think the last little thing I want to touch on is, for those of you guys that don't know, Hearthstone has a ton of really, really cute minions, and they just happen to all cost 0 mana, right? Murloc Tiny Fin, whatever the little name of the demon is, Snowflipper Penguin, all that kind of good stuff. There's a ton of really, really cute minions. But there's one specific tribe that's missing, and that's a pirate. And so they said that there is only a matter of time until they print a 0-mana 1/1 pirate. And I'm just sitting here and I'm like, okay, ship's cannon, patches,
Yeah.
Parasite Brigand. Dude, turn one, ship's cannon into 0-mana pirate, pulling double brigand and Apaches from your deck.
Yeah.
Holy crap, dude.
I think, this is an exact example of what we were just talking about, right? Where they might push something cute like this with standard, and all of a sudden in Wild, it's like, oh, those cards aren't necessarily meant to work together, but here they are. But yeah, if this happens, it would be kind of nutty, right? Because something like Aggro Druid plays 1-mana 1/2.
Oh my god,
no
dude.
real upside. So can you imagine like Gibberling, Embiggen, Queen, 1-drop Pirate, Lotus? Or like a 1/1 Pirate Lotus? Things like that. Doesn't that sound great? Let's do that.
Your definition of great. I will say, I think they said it's a matter of time, so we're going to get it eventually. I would love to see a 0-mana 1/1 totem first, okay? I'm just going to put that out there. I'd rather have a totem before we get the pirate.
Ooh.
For even Shaman and Totem Shaman, but...
I guess we'd play that. Wow. Yeah.
I would 100% play that.
Yeah.
I mean, I would also 100% play the 0-mana 1/1 pirate. And for what it's worth, that 0-mana 1/1 beast, Snow Flipper Penguin, actually legitimately almost saw competitive play. With Scavenger's Ingenuity.
It saw play in Standard at the time, but yeah, you mean it's like recently it saw, like recently it also saw play with Scav Ingenuity. Dude, 0-cost cards in general.
Broken. They have
0-cost cards, they always have a chance. Yeah, and paying mana in Wild Hearthstone or in Hearthstone in general, anything that has the potential to be free has potential to be good. So I think for like the devs, patches kind of filled the role of the 0-mana pirate. Like, does that make sense? It's like a free pirate little 1/1. And so, but I can see like them doing this just for, I guess, like completion sake, right? Yeah. Just like every tribe gets one. Why doesn't pirates get one? So eventually, we'll wait and see on that.
I hope it's very far in the future where eventually the dream turn of ship's cannon into 2 0-mana 1/1 pirates, pulling 2 brigands and pulling patches doesn't even seem that strong. All right,
it's too slow. It's too slow
for our format.
It's in the late game.
But that is one day to be dreaded far in the future. But yeah, that'll wrap it up for our news of the week. And then we're going to be moving on to our next segment. So this is a segment that we are still in the midst of trying out. So we will be doing a deck spotlight instead of our decks of the week. Please let us know your feedback about this segment down in the comments below. But I'm going to hand it off to the good player out of the two of us, Corbett, to take it away with this segment.
Okay, so we're already lying to the viewers. Let's continue. Guys, you should all be playing Mozaki Mage. No. But seriously, Mozaki Mage is the deck of the week that we're going to be talking about. So for anyone unaware, like, let's run through what Mozaki Mage, the idea of the deck is, and then we'll give you like the list. So Mozaki Mage is built around, its namesake, the 5-mana legendary Mozaki. And Mozaki is a 5-mana 3/8 where every time you cast a spell, it gains +1 spell damage. Now, this is a combo that's used in Standard, but we have like a wild version here now. So basically, the plan is to play Mozaki, play out Apprentice, play all your spells, play Cram Sessions, which can draw through your entire deck, and then just like bolt and Ice Lance people in the head for like 50, 60 damage at a time. So yeah, that's the idea of Mozaki Mage. So the list is Arcane Missiles ×2. All these are going to be ×2, by the way, except the legendaries. I figured that'll just speed things up. So Arcane Missiles, Ice Lance, Ray of Frost, Sphere of Sapience, Ancient Mysteries, Conjure Mana Biscuit, Cram Session, Frostbolt, Incanter's Flow, Research Project, 2 Sorcerer's Apprentice, Arcane Intellect, Frost Nova, Double Ice Block, and then we have Luna, Lawkeeper Polkelt, and Mozaki. So there's the 30-card deck list for you guys if you want to play this combo mage deck.
Yeah, I think this mage deck is it's like the modern day equivalent of like Exodia Mage or Freeze Mage from back in the day. Like this is now what Freeze Mage is. It's a turn 7 OTK instead of like a Alexstrasza and then Antonidas Fireballs kind of combo deck, right? Now it's a Mozaki kill you on turn 7, turn 8 style of deck.
Yeah, it's running that very similar package, right? Where it's all running the ice blocks and the novas and things like that. And yeah, like you said, it's sort of the evolution of Exodia Mage. where instead of waiting all the time to just do this Antonitis thing, you kind of have like a 5-mana Antonitis, and you just sort of do insane things with that. So what is the deck like? What is like the role of the deck? What's it good at? How does it feel? So Mozaki Mage is definitely not the strongest deck in the format. It's probably in the like high tier 4 range where it feels competitive, right? But it's not crushing it on ladder. It's not one of the best 9 decks that we were talking about earlier, but it feels a very similar role to something like Malygos Druid, where it can really bully decks that are passive, but does have some problems against things that are a bit more aggressive. So the deck is very solitary, but it's a game of survival, which makes it a little bit different than something like Mally. Mally's mostly about ramp, draw your pieces, kill. This is a bit more like, instead of ramping, this is about stalling and drawing and then going for the kill. The combo turns can be quite complicated, I think. Managing hand size and thinking about drawing through your deck in the correct order and like what your outs are for getting more card draw, things like that can be quite complex. And it's been challenging for me to play, but it's been a lot of fun as well.
Yeah, I think one of the most notable lines is when you're popping off on the Mozaki and getting the perfect amount of card draw or maximizing your card draw with Cram Session, right? And that means sometimes, using one of your damage pieces so that you draw an extra card, so that you get the Conjure Mana Biscuit, so that you have the extra mana to keep drawing through your deck, to keep doing all the damage. So there's a little bit of min-maxes, I think, where the old Exodia Mage didn't really have that. I felt like the old Exodia Mage was a very simple deck to play, I think, for the most part, where I think this deck is a little bit opposite of that. I equate this a lot to... It feels like Quest Mage, where it beats up on the big priest of the world, right? The decks or the Jade Druids and stuff like that. You don't technically have infinite damage like you do with Exodia Mage, but you have more than enough damage to kill most decks, especially since you get to combo on like turn 6, turn 7 with Conjure Mana Biscuits. So I was actually playing a game today where I got killed on turn 6 when my opponent had 16 cards left in their deck. And at the end, I was getting Ice Lance for 20 damage, and my opponent had no cards left in their deck because of the Cram Sessions and the Razor Frost.
So this deck does like pop off consistently on turn 7. Like turn 7 is like, that's your go. It's like a Mechathune deck in that sense, where like turn 8 for Mechathune kind of felt like, all right, this is the normal. Turn 7's normal for this deck. Which is actually like pretty easy to get to in a lot of matchups because of the Ice Block and the Nova. So where this deck really excels, because the general question is, why am I playing a combo mage deck that isn't Quest Mage, right? Like that question keeps coming up. Like, isn't this just Quest Mage? Yeah. There are certain matchups where it's a lot better than Quest Mage. Some that are worse, but some that are a lot better, right? So it's just a different matchup spread. Where this is actually excellent into Dark Lair. Like you beat Dark Lair like very easily with this deck, because you have so much freeze for the Giants, the Ice Blocks, and you can generally manage your way around the one Loathab effect. And also the fact that their life total is so low is that they're kind of at constant risk to just dying to like Frostbolt, Ice Lance. It's very awkward from the Dark Lair side, and it's often pretty easy for you to kind of just freeze, draw, kill. So that's an example of a matchup where this does a lot better than Quest Mage. It's a lot better against something like Big Priest, where if Quest Mage gets like Scrapyard Colossus on turn 5, fighting their way through those taunts is actually kind of a tough time, especially now with Hysteria, meaning that there's not really any room to tempo Giants at all in that matchup. Like you kind of just got to go all in when you go all in. Whereas with this deck, you can like pass Taunt. Taunt does nothing. You can just send everything to the dome over the top on turn 9. And you can just keep freezing the board and the priest can't do anything. At the same time, it's a lot worse into something like Secret Mage because you don't beat Ice Block a lot of the time. And, you are a bit susceptible to things like Dirty Rat. So there's kind of like a bit of, there's some slight differences. And that's why I think the matchup spread tends to look a little bit more like Mally Druid rather than Quest Mage, even though they are similar overall.
So you talked about the matchups that it's getting. Let's talk about... like the Mulligans. I think, first of all, let's touch on like core cards and flex cards. I don't think that there are very many flex cards, but I know some people might not own Sphere or Polkelt. And so if you had to suggest replacements for those two cards, I know those are the ones that are probably the most commonly asked about on your stream as replacements. So if you had to replace them, obviously those are the optimal cards for the build, but if you had to replace them, what would you replace them with?
Evocation is a potential option, where Evocation, you can play it on the combo turn to keep like popping off. That's another legendary though, so maybe it's not like the best budget friendly option. You can often, maybe we can look at like one Flame Ward. It would make your Ancient Mysteries more consistent in terms of like being able to get a secret later in the game. Means that you don't always get Ice Block, which kind of sucks, but maybe that's something people can try. Also, maybe you can like make a bigger secret package in general. Try like double Flame Ward or try Barriers and maybe add like Mad Scientist as a potential option as well.
Got it. All right. Now let's talk about game plan. I think the game plan is very similar in all of the matchups. So I think the big kind of skill point outside of the combo turn itself is Mulligan, right? I think Mulligans and kind of how you're playing out the first few turns in a lot of these matchups is probably going to determine your success in a lot of these games. So do you want to talk through, let's talk through like Darkglare, right? You said it's a very favored matchup against Darkglare. What are you mulling for, and what are you doing in the early game against Darkglare Warlock?
So basically, you're just trying to be efficient with card draw and kind of banking resources. So what I mean by that is like you're looking at things like Conjure Mana Biscuit, Incanter's Flow. These are cards that you can play out on like turn 2 when you're not under any pressure, and you know they just make your future turns so much easier. Like Incanter's Flow is probably like the best card that you can see in the early game. Arcane Intellect is fantastic as well. Research Project is another one that's really good, especially if you're on the play, because often if the Darkglare opponent or any like opponent that's going to draw a lot of cards, if you're on the play and they're on the coin, it's very likely that they get up to about 8 or 9 cards in hand by turn 3, and then you can just rip a Research Project at no real downside, right?
Yeah.
Like they're not drawing cards, you're drawing 2. But those are the big things, right? So you're looking for maybe Sphere of Sapience, Ancient Mysteries, Conjure Mana Biscuit, Incanter's Flow, Arcane Intellect, and potentially Research Project. I wouldn't worry about like keeping freeze effects. You have enough where you'll draw into them if you just look for the other good cards. And the same kind of thing where like you don't need to keep Ice Block because you're effectively running 4 copies. You will find an Ice Block. Like don't worry about it. Just find stuff that makes your hand and deck cheaper and draws you cards. That's like the way to go about this.
All right, and then let's talk about maybe against something like a Kingsbane Rogue, right? A little bit of a more difficult matchup. Would that be a matchup where you are keeping stuff like your Frost Bolts and Razor Frost because freezing the minions or freezing the face might be a little bit more important in that matchup, or still the same general Mulligan game plan?
So it's the same kind of mulligan in most matchups. I think like against Kingsbane is sort of the exception where you would keep something like Arcane Missiles because the missiles work so damn well against those like 2/1 plus patches pirates. Yeah, those opening pirate starts, the missiles are so good. But for the most part, the mulligan is pretty much the same in these matchups. Something I will say against like slower decks, you can keep the Mozaki, but I wouldn't be keeping Mozaki against, you know, a Kingsbane, for example. But the mulligan generally pretty similar, where, you know, if you make your like deck cheaper with flow, you will make these bigger swing turns later. Like you will get to your Frostbolt and Ice Lance on turn 4 or 5 when you really need it. And so it's just mostly about just like setting up enough card draw and all those kinds of things in every situation. But yeah, against the aggro, missiles can be a keep, whereas that otherwise wouldn't be.
And I think one final question that I kind of want to pose, because I feel like a lot of people might be wondering this when they pick up combo decks like this. Do you want to be keeping stuff like Sorcerer's Apprentice in your hand, right? Or in your Luna or Pokelt in your hand because it's the combo piece, right? Do we want to keep them?
Yeah, Apprentice I would never keep, I think. In fact, I would probably be more likely to keep Apprentice in an aggro matchup, like in a very fast aggro druid matchup is where I might keep Apprentice because you're not going to get time to combo, so fighting for board with Apprentice and Missiles and Ray of Frost can actually be relevant. But for the most part, no, you don't actually want the Apprentice because you don't really need the Apprentice for the combo turn that much. Like you have Incanter's Flow. So Incanter's Flow already fills a very similar role to the Apprentice. So the Apprentice becomes a lot less tempting. Against like slow decks, you can keep the Mozaki because that's sort of the unique card that you do need to be able to pop off.
Yeah.
But in general, it's not really about keeping your combo cards straight up. The idea is to draw your combo cards later a lot of the time, once you've already got enough resources. Because if it's turn 4 or turn 5, and you've just got a hand of Mozaki and Apprentice and nothing else, then you know you're not really going to be doing very much. You're probably going to be dead by the time you're going to be 2 turns dead by the time it's time to combo off. So yeah, generally toss those other cards to the cards that I've been talking about earlier.
Cool. Anything else you want to touch on for the Mozaki Mage? Because I know this is like, I used to love old school Freeze Mage, and so I'm probably going to be giving this another touch when I get back to streaming. Like anything else you want to touch on for Mozaki Mage there?
In terms of play pattern, I think something that you touched on about the combo turn, where you want to sequence things correctly. Something cute is that often you don't actually want to cram sessions for everything, because you can make your draw a little awkward, right? So like if you have 10 cards in deck and you can cram for 6 plus research project, you might not get to the last 2 cards because your second cram sessions becomes unplayable. Mm-hmm. So like if you cram and both your cram sessions are like massive, then you'll never be able to play the second copy. So sometimes it's better to like cram for 3 and then use the second cram for 4 or something like that. So that way you can just play out both of them. Both being small to mid is better than only playing one massive one that doesn't actually let you play it and, you know, get through your deck. So that's something to be a little bit wary of on the combo turns. But other than that, it's a pretty complicated deck on the sequencing, but the idea is simple. So if people just play around with it, I'm sure they'll be okay.
Yeah. All right. Let us know, guys, if you have any questions for Corbett, the Sage of Mozaki Mage, down in the comments below. I made that up on the spot, and it was beautiful. But yeah, let us know, guys, your feedback about this segment as well. And there will also be a poll for future weeks where we will do a deck breakdown of the decks that you guys choose. Make sure you guys check out the poll in the pinned comment below. And I think that's going to be it for us today on our State of the Wild episode. I hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll be doing these episodes every Sunday, so make sure you guys drop a like and subscribe if you guys enjoy our content, and make sure you guys share with others. And a reminder that we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the other podcast distributors. So if you want to listen on the go, make sure you guys check us out there. Corbett, thank you again for joining me. Let the people know where they can find you.
Guys, you can find me at CorbettGames on Twitch and Twitter and YouTube and all that kind of good stuff. So thank you guys very much for listening in, and hope you have a good one.
Yeah, make sure you guys check out his stream if you guys want to check out some of that hot Mozaki Mage gameplay. We appreciate all of y'all for watching. We hope y'all enjoyed. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you guys next time. Later.